One and done stories or long runs? What do you like better? Well, there's some clear evidence as to what sales like better. Let's get into that. Hey there, this is Perch. The idea of a one and done story is basically a comic where there's a complete narrative from start to finish, an adventure that starts and wraps up from the beginning of the book to the end. And where this is probably most recently seen is well, by the time this video airs, I think it will start to come out. But Jonathan Hickman's new X-Men flagship title that he's writing. The claim is that it's going to be a number of one and done adventures. Although knowing Hickman, there will be a number of kind of subplots and things that will connect all these books together. But that's the claim. Is it'll be one and done issues. Further back, Warren Ellis did this on Secret Avengers for a period of time between the Ed Brubaker and Rick Remender years. There were a bunch of one and done shots there. And there's been other experiments with this. I think DC has had more of these kind of one and done adventures, but they don't necessarily market it that way. DC has never kind of gone and said, this is a one and done story, because they just kind of do it, and they don't kind of promote the fact that they're doing it. I think when the Batman run ends with Tom King, it wouldn't surprise me if there's an effort to say, hey, we're going to do a bunch of one and done kind of Batman adventures. Is a good jumping on point. And the logic there is sound. It is, especially for an established character, it's, hey, there's going to be a bunch of comics in here, and whether you come in at issue 1 or issue 6, you're going to get a complete story, and then you can work your way backward. And comic shops appreciate those kinds of buffers or breaks between kind of bigger runs or when a creative team is shuffling, because it does help move things from point A to point B nicely for customers. And so nothing wrong with that. But in terms of sales, there's definitely some good evidence, and it's funny because I've got into an argument with somebody who said, there's no proof that what I'm about to say is true, but there is proof. You just have to look. You have to look longer scale or longer term, bigger scale, and that's the one and done issues don't sell as well as the stories that are part of a storyline. There is a sense of throwaway. It kind of goes back to TV, where the episodes that are self-contained are seen as filler between the big kind of fall premiere, winter break, sweeps week kind of times where the real story is moving along. You'd see this with Gotham to some extent recently. Just pick a recent kind of DC version. You'd get kind of the bigger story arcs with the Riddler or with the Penguin, with Gordon, and you'd have these episodes that really don't have much to do with the bigger mythology or story, and it doesn't feature all of the normal characters. So you kind of wonder, was there a series commitment for just 12 of the 18 episodes, or what happened here? And you used to especially see that a lot with not so much shows like Lost, which were big serial adventures, but any kind of drama or serial show. You'd see kind of a few episodes in kind of October ish, and then again in March and April. You'd see these kind of just fill-in episodes where they weren't really moving anything along. They weren't trying to sell to advertisers. And comics it has the same kind of feel of this is a comic that isn't as important as the regular story or how it goes. And so it's an interesting technique that gets used. But so I have two minds about it. One, comic shops do appreciate one and done issues because, like I said, it's a good place to bring in new readers. You don't need necessarily jumping on points. In fact, I have this theory that when a comic company advertises as the perfect jumping on point for new readers, that new readers don't jump on. That whole sentence seems to imply that at other times the book is very inaccessible. And so we're kind of opening up this window where you can jump on, but it's kind of admitting our comic is so screwed up that we have this this jumping on point to help you get into the comic before we go back to being inaccessible. I think it's interesting. There's like a subtle negative message. I'd love to see if anybody at DC or Marvel has done some marketing research or seen if those kind of tactics work to actually do bring people on, because typically speaking, If you take out kind of the false sales bump that new number one issues bring, the one in, or the perfect jumping on point for new readers gimmick doesn't usually translate to new reader sales. In fact, if anything, the jumping on point for new readers often signals the opposite. It's a good jumping off point for old readers or people who are on the fence about the title and are ready to conclude their run. The one and done issue is not that way, but it does have the feeling of filler. So, I think the right way to do it is if you're doing, if you're doing a bunch of one and done kind of one shot issues within a run, then having a consistent writer artist team is, I think, best. It sends a message that even though we're seeing a bunch of different things, there's still some consistency here. With X-Men, I'm very curious. Little Francis Yu is the artist on the book, and I think he's cited as just the artist. I think once again, it's a case where we're not going to get an inker. We're just going to get kind of one person doing the whole job. And I'm curious how long he stays on the comic. I think there's betting odds by January will he still be there, because the book is double shipping a little bit. And when I say double shipping, this came up in a recent episode. I'm talking about it's a monthly title, but it's shipping 2 books in 1 month, not a comic store orders 30 and there's overships up to 60. That's often what people think of as double shipping, and I guess that's a more common use of the term. But to me, double shipping is always where they say there's going to be, this is a monthly comic, and by the way, you can order 2 copies in November, 2 copies in December. I think with this pace, I'll be surprised if Yu is still on the book, say by issue 6, and that's going to be a disappointment. Generally speaking, Marvel has been doing this a lot lately, where they launch a book with a bigger name artist, and then by issue 4 to 6, they've swapped it out for a lesser unknown artist, and then occasionally you just get weird kind of good artists come and go. The Avengers book has been that way, where you had McGuinness kind of start the book, do kind of the first arc, and then immediately got a potpourri of artists come and go, and you had McGuinness, he's back for an issue, and then he's gone, and then that kind of stuff sends a pretty negative message. But I've talked about all this before. Anyway, that's kind of what one and done means, and it's also how it impacts sales. Like I said, the one and done issues, if you look at the pure sales numbers for a comic, they don't sell as well. The numbers are lower if you take the big picture and you look historically over time, and it is because they're seen as not critical. So part of the challenge with one and done is to say, even though this is a self-contained comic in one issue, there are bigger things going on. So as we're looking at Hickman's X-Men run, like I said, my suspicion is there will be a little bit of a sprinkling of Claremont, if you will, where you'll have kind of one and done comics, but there will be some things moving on in the background, some kind of interesting subplots that are kind of gestating underneath the surface. If Hickman can do that, if you open up that first issue and there's a very solid single adventure in 19 of the pages, and then you've got 2 to 3 of the pages devoted to some subplot activities or some things that are setting up future adventures, if you open up the comic and that's what you get, then I think you are, that's going to be a signal that it's going to be a very, very powerful, strong run. If it's purely just one and done issues, then my thought is going to start to go to how long before Hickman just kind of becomes, an editor or a showrunner, if you will, of the X line, and even the core X-Men book goes off to someone else. I think that's of concern. But anyway, some interesting stuff. I think, like I said, I think comics and publishers should do one and done issues. I think they're valuable to have, even if they don't sell quite as well. As long as they can position them as still being important, I think it does a lot to bring in new readers, and it does help people kind of jump on board. Especially if you can get an issue that you can kind of mentally digest from the cover and kind of from the initial pitch. That's going to be easier than saying, "Hey, jump on now for a new arc." I think one of the problems with the jumping on for new readers is that new readers are asked to jump onto an arc. They're asking to make a commitment of 6 issues to 9 issues, however long the arc is going to be. And so that's not a great proposition for new readers, because if there's a new person curious about a comic and it's like, jump on board, perfect jumping on point for new readers, and the comic is $3.99 and the arc is going to be 6 issues, you're basically saying, come and jump on to a $25 plus tax commitment. That is a tougher sell to somebody who's just kind of curious about what the X-Men are like, and they're okay buying $4 to kind of try it out. Anyway, what do I know? I'm not in comics marketing, so it's just my opinion. Hey, what do you think? One and done issues. Do you like them? Hate them? Leave a comment below. Let me know what you think. Like, subscribe, click the bell for notification, tell a friend. Follow me on Twitter, Comic Perch, and thanks for listening.